Welcome to Abstract Curiosity Podcast, your go-to spot for those eager to explore the world with a curious eye. I'm Rebeka, a 1-3 mental projector.
I'm Michelle, a 4-1 emotional generator. Come join us because life is an adventure and sometimes we just need a funky new roadmap to navigate our way through this wild world. Welcome.
Hi, friends. Welcome to Abstract Curiosity. We are so glad you're here. Today, we are finishing our series on life transitions. We're going to be talking about Chiron Return. And I'm really excited. Like, Chiron is showing up already because I'm here with my co-host and amazing friend, Michelle, and she's already had some deep insights this morning.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I'm excited you guys are here again because, through Chiron itself, if you've listened to any of our other stuff or even taken our free masterclass on understanding your Chiron, the thing that has been coming really clear to me today when Rebeka and I were doing we always do a prayer and intention before we get on and do any of our work. And what came through very clearly was this idea that the energy of Chiron is really running through whatever comes through this, which means that I think we forget the potency of words and how just hearing somebody talk about their own journey through something, how that really can almost clear the pathway some ways to help other people to see it for themselves, right?
Absolutely.
Or it can be like you're going to receive your own download from Chiron, or you're going to receive some new epiphany or some new healing that can just happen. And healing means you're doing it, like you're becoming aware of it, like, and you don't have the fear so intensely, maybe, or you have the fear so intensely, it doesn't matter. You're still going to walk through it. And I think that the imprint of, I think, what this particular podcast is going to offer is that. So even if you decide that you just kind of want to take this and listen to it while you're walking and just feel the words and the residency of things, like when we're talking about Chiron, the energy is available to you to tap into in a very esoteric kind of way. Does that make sense? My big line. Does that make sense? It'll make sense to those it needs to make sense to, I guess.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah. I think also there was a big epiphany just a few moments ago for me on, the spidey senses and really feeling, and that is part of my Chiron, is like learning to really, like gate 25 for me, which we're going to get into in a little bit. But this idea of like spiritual growth and understanding the potency of being somebody who's very tuned into her spidey senses and allowing it to come out even more. Listen, I get it. It feels scary. And I just had that moment a second ago. So again, Rebeka and I are here to share our experiences because as anybody who is teaching anything, we ourselves are still going through major growth spurts and we always will, right? Like
Oh, yeah. That's life.
that's life. Yeah. And because we've had the honor of having the time, like we've created the time to really spend within this energy, it makes a big difference. So welcome. So what do you want to start with first, my friend? What should we start with first here?
Well, let's just talk about Chiron return in general. I guess first, let's just recap real quick. If you're just finding us or you didn't listen to others, we have these major life transitions that happen that are shown in astrology. The first one is the Saturn return, which is around 27 to 30-ish. And that's just like your first big hit of moving into adulthood, essentially.
Yeah.
Saturn's going to get you on track if you've gotten off track. The second one is the Uranus opposition, which happens around 40 to 42-ish. I am smack in the middle of mine. And so we talked about that. And so that's another one where things are going to shift if you're off track, but Uranus does it with more like surprises and spiritual awareness. And then the final one, it's not really the final one, but the last big one is the Chiron return. And this happens around 50-ish. And so that's the one we're going to talk about today. And of course, Then you have like the second Saturn return. There's all kinds of stuff that still happen, but these are the three major ones that tend to really hit people. The Saturn return around 30, people are like, I'm having a quarter life crisis. But no, it's just Saturn is fixing things. And then the Chiron return tends to be called the midlife crisis. But again, Chiron is just coming in and doing its job. So that's what we're talking about today. So what would you say, Michelle, about Chiron return? Like, what is it? What do we need to know?
Well, Chiron is always going to be, I think that by the age of 30, you have really probably been able to see and sense like a pattern sometimes of the thing that really does kind of frighten you. It makes you still feel very vulnerable. It's the thing that still kind of holds you back in some ways. And that's the truth in what's happening with Chiron and the return is that you're going to have an opportunity to face it again, like in the biggest way,
Mhm.
because Chiron's all about, hey, listen, you got a wound. We all do. It's nothing for all of us to like sit in the story of it. It's actually helping us to walk and merge through it because you've been doing it all your life. And when you can really understand what it is identifying with, what is it attached to, and most of the time it's attached to something when you were a child and or in a past life, something that you didn't get a chance to really nurture, and it's the thing that's here to help you grow the most. So I would say by your 50s, you're hitting a point where wisdom should really kind of be coming in at that point, right?
For sure.
And where do we get our wisdom from is whatever we've walked through in our lives. And what for some people they've ignored. And that's what happens sometimes in the Chiron return. And did you ask me about Chiron or Chiron return? Because I'm kind of
Chiron
going back.
return.
Okay,
Chiron
cool.
return. Yeah.
Yeah. So sometimes what happens is in the Chiron return is for some people who've been very aware of what their wound is, it's still going to probably bubble up to the surface in a big way to make sure, like, hey, you're here to share your wisdom now and what it is that you have journeyed through with this particular wound that you've held on to for a long period of time, for your whole life, right? And then by age 50, I really feel like people who are awake and aware and are learning this for themselves then become the healer in a sense because you understand what you've gone through. And that's what Chiron's always trying to teach us. Like, use what it is that your wound was to help yourself first and foremost, because we have to heal ourselves, right? Every time we
Hmm.
walk through it, and then be able to offer it to those who need it and desire it themselves because we all have different stories with it, but when you can support somebody going through it with saying, hey, that whisper in you that says you're not good enough, or, it's not safe to be vulnerable, or it's not safe to feel things wherever your Chiron hits, like whatever chakra systems we're talking about. Um, it's going to help you really tend to it. Like by your 50th year, it's saying, have you been tending to your own wounds? Because if you haven't, it's probably going to bubble up in a really big, significant way, and there's no fear in it because we all get to go through it. And that's the cool thing. All of these journeys we go through, you guys, we all get to experience, whether you call it what we call it or not, right? We all get to
Right.
experience it. Yeah. What would you say about it? Anything
Um, yeah, no, I
else?
think that's great. Just kind of this amazing time. Okay, these transitions tend to be a little dramatic for most people from what we've experienced. And
Yes.
so when you can realize that this is all for the greatest and highest good and that this is really about your alignment, then it can help with some of the transition, with some of the craziness. And I mean, it all depends. Not everybody has a crazy time because some people just figure out how to live as themselves without trying.
True.
Um, but so it's just a beautiful process. It's a beautiful thing to help you or to support you in being more you. And I like the how you were talking about the wisdom. And if you know human design and you have a 6 in your profile, then this is the time of you becoming the role model. And so I think that that's kind of true for everybody regardless. It's just
Mhm.
in different capacities, right? Like the 6 line really really experiences these transitions and everybody else does, but just it's not quite as loud. And so this is just really a time for you to become that role model, to embody your wisdom, to really sit with it and let it integrate so that you can role model what you've learned and support other people. And I think
Yeah,
they
because
call it I was just thinking of the midlife crisis and how people are like, "Oh, they're going crazy." It's like, no, you just realized that you haven't been living as yourself. So you're doing that. Like, let it happen.
yeah, I think there's a lot of transits that they call even the Neptune conjunct Neptune. That's always another one that people call as a midlife crisis too. I've read that in other
Mhm.
other books. So here's the thing that I see with Chiron in the wisdom part is that usually by age 50, for women in particular, you're either through menopause or you're going through menopause. And we already know that when you get to that crone phase, right? That's where the wisdom seeker, like in the six, like what you talked about, if you have a six in your profile, love that. And I think by the age of 50, most people are done with their younger years of, if you're going to have children, raising children. Or you've probably been in a career or something else that you've done for a while. So there's just so much wisdom from you. But are you hiding from the wisdom? Or are you embracing what it is that you've learned or you're currently learning, right? Because
Mhm.
wisdom means that you can also understand that you don't know everything.
Yes.
That's true wisdom. Like,
Yes.
this is what I experienced. What have you experienced in it? Um, and I think that as you know, Rebeka and I's always goal about talking all of this is we really want a planet in which consciousness becomes the most important thing for all of us, that we're all growing and evolving, and we all can appreciate each other's gifts and each other's wounds in a way that makes it be a fairly eloquent way of living now instead of keeping up with the Joneses kind of element. Like, oh, that's how you're cool, because it opens up to possibilities. And I think that's another thing we're about here is like, let's break through the boxes that we've all been contained in here in this world. And let's move forward in a more Aquarian way, which is each person gets to be unique and gets to heal in their own unique way and discover what it is that they keep stumbling upon. So, yeah. So, shall we? Okay, that's true because you haven't been through your Chiron return. That's hysterical. I'm like, okay, let's start with you today. That's right.
Nope, it's all about you.
Now I see why you said what you said before we came on. Okay, very cool. All right. Can you do me a favor? Can you pull it up on Genetic Matrix to show me the date again of mine? Because that always jars me a wee
Yes.
bit here. Oh, of course, she's already got it up. She's so good.
April 7th, 2019.
Okay.
Oh, so you got to go through Chiron Return right before COVID.
I did. And it was a
Yay.
big, I can tell you that I was starting to feel Chiron in 2018
Mm.
because, okay, so let's think about, mine is in belief systems. My Chiron return is in the house of Sagittarius. Pisces is the sign. And again, we have a master class on that if you guys want to go grab it to learn just those details. And it also is in gate 25 and 17. I don't know if you want to blow that up and show people where that's at. And I don't know
Well,
what detail we want to
it
go
doesn't
into.
show the Chiron over
Right.
here because I'm looking at that, but 25 is here on the Identity Center, 17 is up here in the Ajna. And you had a whole bunch of channels you were learning through for this time. And I think we discovered this before, but again, your Chiron return, the sun was in gate 51. That
Yeah.
if y'all want to know any more about Chiron and gate 51, we did like quite a few episodes at the very beginning of our podcast. Because it
Yeah.
was it was happening.
So right around 2018, which is when I would have started to really feel that Chiron return coming in. Um, I had literally just got hired in to be a flight attendant. I was leaving my practice. I had a private practice. I was doing very well in my private practice. And everybody had left. My husband was traveling all the time. Both of my kids were gone to school. Our dog had passed away, and I just felt like I needed to do something different for myself.
Yeah.
So I became a flight attendant. And if you know anything about that industry, as a flight attendant, you go away, can't be around you don't see anybody in your family for about 4.5, 5 weeks. I trained for one company, worked with them for a few months, didn't like it, got hired by a different company, went back to another training within the same year,
Wow.
which was insane. It was an
Yeah.
insane amount of learning. Again, that gate 51 just cracks me up because it totally was that. It's a gate of shock. And boy, and so many people are looking at me like, what are you doing? And I'm like, yeah, I'm going through some transitions here. I got to figure out who I am again. And I will tell you, I was really in a space of like not really. So gate 17 has a lot to do with opinions. And
Mhm.
Rebecca's gonna be able to talk about this really well for me because it's hard to talk about it for yourself. But and then gate 25. So which has a lot to do with spirituality.
Mhm.
And when Chiron hit, I already knew by April of 2019, I was going to be leaving it soon. I'd already been there almost a year, but I was really nervous to let people know I was going to be leaving. Um,
Mm.
yeah, I was very fearful of it. And I was worried about what people were going to think of me. But in my head, what happened was when I was in the sky, I was coaching. I knew when I walked onto the plane because when you're first a flight attendant, you're always on call. And so I knew the minute I would walk onto the plane, like why I was there on that specific flight, whether it was the pilot needed some guidance or
Interesting.
yeah, or the flight attendant, or there was a passenger, because I had quite a few passenger things. And then I really opened up to a lot of people about their spidey senses and like talking to people about it in the sky, to those that I knew that wanted to know, because I'd have a lot of people come to me and say, "Why are you here?" I had so many flight attendants say that, like, "Why are you here?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I really needed to challenge myself. I needed to look at a few things." And people would say, in fact, I had one person say, I Googled you, which of course they were a millennial. And I gasped. I'm like, you Googled me. She goes, because there's just so much more to you, but you're very quiet about it. I'm like, well, that's kind of the Scorpio in me. I'm more of
Mm.
an observer and people until you ask me questions, I don't typically, offer up. And not in a mean way, just how I operate, right?
Right.
Anyways, and it probably could be some of my Chiron, but anyways, so she said, I Googled you and I couldn't find anything. I'm like, oh, because my personal name and my business name are totally different. And she said, oh, that's why I couldn't figure it out. I'm like, yeah. So, anyways, it was interesting because I got to utilize my skills and I got to learn that my spidey senses were pretty darn on. And that's when I really started to own my spidey senses to a new level than what I had
Mhm.
before. And that's part of my chironic energy. So I would say it was a very tough time. I knew about Chiron back then, but not like I do now. And so I left and I decided in that moment, that's it. I'm diving into all of this stuff full born, and I cannot let the fear of people finding out about me and who I truly am, which is so silly.
Mm.
And isn't it funny how we say that to ourselves? We think, and especially as a Scorpio, I always think that I'm so well hidden, nobody can figure me out. I think a lot of Scorpios can relate to that. But in truth, everyone, if they can't figure out, they're digging or they'll ask the right questions. But it's kind of like I had to go through this whole personal inward journey
Mhm.
of how can I show up to the world and be myself and feel comfortable in my own skin in doing it? Hello, Chiron.
Yes, yes. Because, like you said, okay, so this is so fascinating to look at. Because let's go back for a second. Your Chiron on your birth chart is in gate 17 and gate 25. So that
Mhm.
17 is all about opinions, and the 25 is about connecting to spirit. And you were talking about both of those. Like, you were scared of people's opinions. You were noticing people's opinions. Like, why are you even here? And what are they going to say when
Yes.
I leave? And all of that. But then that opening up, that fascinates me is like, it's like you needed this experience. You needed to be in this place um, with all these people to really fine tune your intuition and your connection to spirit and how that connects you to the other people. And you didn't know that when you were signing up as a flight attendant.
No. No, and it's funny because I think one of the other reasons I got directed up that way is my environment. If you know human design and the variables, my environment, the best environment for me is mountaintop. Well,
Mm,
how much more mountaintoppy could you be but in a plane? I've
mhm.
always loved planes. I've always loved being in them. And I think it was really another way for God's spirit universe to kind of poke me like, go this way for a little while. You need a different perspective. You need to be in an environment that's going to help you learn more about you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Interesting,
And
right?
how perfect, like, you couldn't have orchestrated that at all.
No.
And then this is all being inside of the Gate 51, the shock, and all of it is kind of shocking. You're like, "Okay, well, everybody left. My kids are gone. The dog is gone even. Okay." And
Yeah.
so I'll just leave my job and, like, shock, shock, shock. Like,
Yeah.
just these big transitions happening.
Big transitions. Yeah. And the idea of even me, because I did keep some of my clients, but they had to be really, really flexible because, it's a flight attendant. You never know when you're gonna be gone. So I always had a few of them still there. So yeah, I think the shock of there were so many layers. And again, this is what we love about Chiron is like the true fear was, are people going to find out about me? Can I really own my own opinions and allow other people to have their opinions of me without me feeling like I'm going to break down into something? And I really had to work through
Mhm.
that during that time. And then knowing that, the love of spirit, the love of life, and like knowing that I do have this ability, which I still didn't really 100% believe in. And I think we all go through those phases when it comes to spidey senses and diving into it. Is I think that there's just layers to it, and that's okay because I think the thing that someone of my age has gone through is that spidey senses, when we talked about that when I was younger, was only for the crazy people.
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
That's
I feel
changing.
like it is changing because I mean, you look at TV shows or just general society things, and that's what they do. And I feel like there's still some of it, if there's like the like woo woo aunt on the TV show, and they're like, oh, okay, well,
Yes, yes.
or like Phoebe on Friends, like she was fun, but everybody was like, is she okay?
Yes, yes, exactly. Exactly. So I think that the discovery, and I continue to discover it, like my whole ability to even channel, like that has only been in the
Hmm.
last couple of years that I've gotten really clear on all that. And listen, when you look at my human design chart, which is the one on the left, I'm pretty well defined in the head and I am defined, not pretty. I'm defined in those two areas and my throat, what I find is for someone like that has those three areas defined, is that if people ask me questions, if I'm in the zone, which usually when I'm coaching somebody I am, and they
Hmm.
ask me questions, I get insights that aren't of mine, like total downloads of things. And I didn't know I was doing it.
Mm.
And I think that was part of the discovery even through after Chiron. Because listen, just because I hit it, it was big. It was quite uncomfortable. It was like, but when I came back from it and I was like, ooh, I really just need to own this is who I am now. I had to kind of go on this journey to figure that out for myself, all by myself. Like I left home for 2 months and then I was never home. And then I got based in another state. Like
Oh,
it
wow.
was, yeah,
So
I
you
was
really
never home.
were, yeah. It was like, oh my gosh, yeah. So that feels like so 51 again. It's like, "Hey, let's move you over here. Let's separate you a little bit so that you can actually listen to yourself." And that feels so necessary if your kids are just leaving, I mean, as a mom, we tend to really focus on our kids, even if we're trying to focus on ourselves. If our kids are there, we're gonna focus on our
Yes.
kids.
Yes. Yes. 1,000%. And I was still trying to do that while I was gone, which stressed me out even more. Right.
Yeah, yeah.
And then I ended up nurturing everybody in the classes in both of the schools. I became the mom to the entire group.
Oh, I love it.
I did more counseling in those things than, yeah. Um,
So it really started from the beginning. It's like, "Hey, you have a knack for this. Get some practice in real quick."
yeah. And I think it's so funny because my husband's a consultant too. And I think, him and I have always discussed like, how when someone is a coach or, a consultant or whatever you want to call it, a lot of the times people can get pretty used to just being in your own little cocoon of a world. And I
Mm,
said, going out and being in a tube in the sky, 30,000 feet in the sky, meaning everybody from every walk of life and every belief system gets shoved in that, right?
mhm.
I learned pretty darn quickly to be able to tune in to see who needed my support and why. And again, that had to do with my own spidey senses, right? I could
Yeah.
I could just sense it. So I'd spend a lot of time going to check in on those particular people or the flight attendant or the pilot or the gate agent who was there that day. Like I could sense it. So it gave me a
Mm.
great opportunity without me knowing it to practice all that. And it's funny because in training, for some reason, certain people would pull out of me. So what else can you do? And I'm like, so I was teaching people how to do auras on planes. And then I would have flight attendants contact me, even there's still some of them that we're still good friends. But even one of them, like a year later, called me out of the blue and she goes, I have to tell you something that happened to me. And so she goes on to this amazing story talking about how this priest walked on and said he was going to his mother's funeral. And so she said, I was checking in on him and I was in the jump seat. And all of a sudden, she goes, I almost had to get out of my jump seat because I saw this elderly woman standing next to that priest. And she goes, and then it dawned on me that is not a real person. So she's calling, she goes, can ghosts appear in the sky? And I started laughing. I said, you are so darn sweet. It's not something you would typically think you would, but yes, the entity. So she saw the woman that he was going to go see the funeral for. So she said, I went up after I saw her, and then it dawned on me, that's not anybody standing there. She evaporated. And she said, so I knew. And I went up and I asked him a little bit more, and he described his mom. And she said it was a really, really cool moment. And she said, but I wouldn't have owned that had
Wow.
somebody not in class talk to me about different things, out of the box
Right.
thinking. So it was really,
Right.
that was an exceptional. She's had quite a few moments like that being a flight
Oh,
attendant.
that is so cool.
Isn't that cool? Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, so grateful for my Chiron return. I'm really grateful for it. I learned so many more skills for myself. I really could own more about myself. It still was very uncomfortable to start and then come back. Comments from people. Some people are like, "Oh, I think that's so good that you gave it a try." And I thought, isn't that interesting when people say,
Ew.
"Yeah, right?" And I'm like, I wonder how often I've said that to people in my past when I didn't realize. Like that is owie. And that, why did you leave? Right? That's the next question I
Yeah.
knew I was going to have to deal with. And then the truth is because I was doing what I was doing in the sky.
Because your
I,
mission was done. Like,
yeah, my mission was done. I was still doing basically counseling. I was still coaching people. I was still supporting people. I was doing it in a tube. It fine tuned my skills and it was complete.
yeah, the end.
So you'll
Like,
see my Chirons April 7th, 2019, and I left September 19th, 2019, right before
wow.
COVID. Yeah.
Wow.
Oh, we got a little friend barking away. I love it.
So
Awesome.
sorry, I'm dog sitting for a friend and
Quite all right. We love a little critter. We love a little
she's
critter.
protecting everybody.
Yeah. Very cool.
So the other thing that is hitting me as you're talking about this, it's really fascinating because you have the 2-5 profile for this Chiron return.
Ugh.
And that seems so appropriate, right? Like you just had this natural spiritual gift and then you were universalizing it. Like, how crazy is that?
Uh, wow. Yeah. I love that. And I love the idea too that hermiting, it was quite an uncomfortable place to be hermiting. But boy, when I got off that plane, that's all I wanted to do was just go hermit, hermit, hermit. That's interesting.
Well, and the universe kind of hermited you, like you were just saying, you had to go out and train, like you were away from the house all the time. So it kind of hermited you to fine
Yeah.
tune this gift for you to universalize. Like that's kind of blown my mind. And it's all grounded with the 57, which is the biggest intuitive gate. So these shocks were helping you to ground into the intuition. I mean, it's really fascinating.
Yeah, that's pretty cool to see it in that context of how 57 was really being lit up. Because 57 normally is in my moon. It's my moon sign, right? Yeah.
Oh, that's right here. Yeah, your
Uh-huh.
subconscious moon.
Uh-huh.
And it's here off of the spleen, you can see. And so this is interesting too. So you have it in your chart, but it was lit up in the Chiron return, but you also had a whole bunch of the integration circuit here. You had that 34 coming in and
Mm.
that gate 20. So there was a lot. Gosh, and then you had a couple extra channels off of your throat to your ajna, so there was just a lot. No wonder you were sharing so much.
It does make sense. Yeah, that does make sense. Look at all of that. That's pretty incredible.
You have like 4
That
extra channels coming out of your throat.
and what I think is even more incredible is take a look at my root. Now my root's always defined,
Yes.
but everything's connected finally. I don't have that in my normal chart.
I mean, yeah, it just connected to all 3 of your hanging gates off of your spleen
Mm.
and your single definition inside of this chart instead of triple split. So you had a chance to really connect in.
Yeah, and I even had that 360. Wow. Yeah, it was definitely a potency time for me. Um, and it was funny because both graduations, I was asked to speak at both of them.
Oh,
And
wow.
yeah, and look at yeah, that's crazy. Interesting because at the time of this Chiron return, the September before that, I was in my second class and they'd asked me to do a speech and I wanted to do a funny speech. I didn't want it to be like, "Rah," you know what I mean? Like, let's put some humor into it. And I'm like, I've never written anything humorous in my life. How in the hell am I going to do this? So everyone went off to party and I stayed in my room and I wrote for like 4 hours. And I ended up one of the trainers was a Star Wars fanatic. So I looked up all the names of the characters of Star Wars and I put all 50 students in the story about our trainer, the head. She was Han Solo or whatever, and how each of us had a role in it. And it went really well. And I would contribute that to my 1156, I'm just going to say.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. 1156 is a great channel for like storytelling and being able to do it in a really, really unique way. And yeah, that's interesting. Very cool.
It is cool.
Yeah, very cool. So I think out of all of the lessons that I learned, I would say that learning to embrace my unique way of looking at the world
Mm.
really came into view during this. I think I was scared to own that before. And again, it's my Chiron. It's still there,
Yes.
folks.
Yes. I know I still see it pop out sometimes, especially that opinion one. I feel like that one really hit you. But it's funny how they mix together because it's like you'll be scared of people's opinions about your spiritual gifts. So it's like they're mushed together.
Truly. Yeah, truly. Very interesting.
But how amazing that you started to own it and implement it, and now you've just helped so many people, and the more you step into it, and then it's fascinating watching you these past 6 months and how it's even become more fine-tuned through this work and how you're finding even more gifts and abilities, it feels like to me. Does it feel like to you like you're still, releasing a lot of these?
Yeah, and I think that a lot of it has to do with if you want to, I'd love to see your face fully. Can I see your face fully now?
Oh, sure.
I think part of the fear of like, I mean, my Chiron hits an area of like, it's okay to share what you're unique. I mean, part of my life purpose has to do with sharing insights, right?
Mhm,
That's what I'm here to do. But my Chiron tells me kind of the opposite. My Chiron says it's going to feel really difficult to do so. And
mhm.
that of course, I would pick a family who your intuitive insights couldn't be talked about. Like that wasn't that. it just wasn't a part of it,
Yeah.
of my culture, of my life. Like I didn't know any of that. I was always fascinated with it as a kid, but no one to talk to about it, right?
Right.
And so it's funny, this morning I was sharing with Rebeka that I had a whole new level of something I had to work through that really does dial into intuition again, like being okay with it. And that is this idea of like opening up my feelings more, because I learned at a young age I had to harbor my feelings, which feelings are your spidey senses too.
Hmm.
1000%, right? Whether you're defined or not in human design with your solar plexus, I think, and there's other ways that we consider you like an empath, empathic in some ways, but for
Hmm.
me, um, feeling when something's really, really off and knowing what to do with that feeling because it feels really nervous to walk through it. But I had a moment this morning that I had to walk through something yet again, a whole new level and layer of it. And that's what we're always talking about, is that it never dies, which is the greatest gift
Hmm.
because it causes me to come back into the present moment, which is what Chiron wants us to do. I've been through my return. However, I am a different person having walked through it because now I'm about 4.5 years outside of that. And knowing that it's going to continue to ping at me because I still have the fear.
Yes.
But now I recognize the fear as a gift and not as a fear, right? Like,
Exactly. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. And you can recognize when it's coming up and not let it stop you.
Yeah, in fact, it propels me for it because I know that when I'm feeling and sensing it, that's the next thing I should be focusing on.
Yes, that's true. You're like, oh, okay. We're learning another thing. Let's go learn another thing.
Yeah, that I don't have to deny it or ignore it. In fact, ignoring it is the worst thing you can do because that means it's going to bubble up so that when you do hit your Chiron return, it's going to be a doozy.
Yes.
But integration takes time. And listen, you guys, I didn't know what I know at this point in time when I was 49. Like the
Right.
learning curve is unbelievable now for people. I mean, we can learn things at such a rapid pace now about ourselves.
It's so wild. Yeah.
And that's why we love human design so much because it teaches us that. It teaches you to know yourself so well. And then I think, oh, I know myself so well. And then something new comes up like, oh, wait a minute. I didn't really own that about myself. Huh.
Like I
Yeah.
thought I had, but apparently not.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm curious to hear from other people who might be watching this. If you're going through it, if you've gone through it, like what was your experience? Um, if you're preparing to go through it, have you looked at the details of it? Do you have the support to get you through this with really love and light around you? Yeah, we're really curious to hear and know how other people have experienced it.
Yeah, let us know whatever questions that you have. And if you haven't looked into your personal Chiron, we have a free masterclass all about it. So you can check that out as well. It gives a whole
Yeah,
bunch of good information.
ton of information on it. Like as much as you can do as general as you can get with Chiron and teaching Chiron, this is packed full of information.
Yes.
So
I know
we'll have the link. Yeah, we have the
we will
link on
have
our
the
website.
link.
Yeah,
And we
on
kind of had a
YouTube.
hard time because we wanted to really support y'all, but it's like it's so personalized. So we gave you as much as we could, and I think
Yeah.
it worked out pretty well. We got some good feedback from it. So check that out if you want. Let us know what questions you have. Thank you so much for being here. If you haven't yet, go ahead and subscribe wherever you listen to this. And we are grateful that you're here. We're grateful that you listen to us, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, guys. Have a great day.